This is exactly what we wanted to hear, as many Bucks fans were worried after Gary Trent Jr. went down in practice with an injury, but we have a massive update on that front. So we're going to break that down in this episode, as well as discuss Giannis Antetokounmpo. He spoke out on Gary Trent Jr. and what he expects his impact to be on the Bucks this upcoming year. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, but before we get into it, quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. If you're part of the 86% who aren't subscribed to the channel, we're getting very, very close to 1,000 subscribers. That's been a big goal of ours for a while. So if you're part of the 86%, make sure to hit that subscribe button. But we had some news to go over today. Obviously, the Bucks play a preseason game tomorrow, but one of the big stories and headlines was Gary Trent Jr. going down with an injury at practice. And when the headline first came out about an injury, obviously at this point we're in training camp and the preseason is underway, but you do not want to have any injuries, especially if if you're a Bucks fan, to Gary Trent Jr., who was one of their new prized possessions of the offseason. But we have some good updates on that front. As you can see here, obviously Gary Trent Jr. is getting some shots up, and Doc Rivers told reporters that Gary Trent Jr. did not practice because of his left elbow hyperextension, but added that he'll be fine. He said there was no MRI needed to check on ligament damage, but he suspects Trent will play on Thursday, but won't guarantee it. So obviously when he was missing from practice, reporters and a lot of the Bucks beat reporters came out and said that he's missing practice. We'll wait to hear on an update. Tons of Bucks fans out there were, myself included, were a little bit worried because you never want to have guys miss practice. Obviously it is just training camp, and we're still a little bit, ways away from the regular season, so you'd rather the Bucks be precautious, especially with a guy like Gary Trent Jr., who figures to be a starter this upcoming season. But the good news here is, after all the initial concern, Doc Rivers did say that no MRI was needed and that he'll be fine. Now, obviously, anything to do with the elbow is a little bit concerning. It's obviously not his shooting elbow, but the fact that there was no MRI needed is very encouraging for us, because ultimately at this point, it's you want them to take the precautious route, and it's very, very good news that it's not anything more severe, because the Bucks have dealt with enough injuries, and you definitely do not need an injury. We don't need an injury to Gary Trent Jr., especially given the lack of depth we have right now at the two-guard position, especially with Chris Middleton, who is also dealing with an injury. So a bit of a bullet dodge there. Hopefully he's going to be able to play. Now, one thing he did mention was that he suspects that Gary Trent Jr. will play tomorrow on Thursday, but he won't guarantee it. So I suspect that if he's feeling any sort of pain or if he's not 100%, they're probably going to hold him out, because games at this point don't really matter for the Milwaukee Bucks. Obviously, it's preseason. You want to get some chemistry between Giannis, and especially because Gary Trent Jr., it's his first year playing under Doc Rivers. I'm sure that they would love to see what he has to offer playing alongside a lot of the guys. And I believe Giannis is also preparing to make his debut soon as well. So ultimately, I'd say he's going to play tomorrow, but if he's not feeling 100%, Doc could not guarantee that Gary Trent Jr. will make his Bucks or play for the Bucks tomorrow. So something to keep an eye on. We'll keep you updated with that, but some very good news ultimately. No major injury, no MRI needed, no ligament damage. Everything is good on that front, and he'll definitely be good for opening night, bearing hopefully unless other injuries happen, but hopefully that doesn't happen. But to go with the Gary Trent Jr. news and the addition here, Giannis recently spoke out and applauded Bucks newcomer, welcoming him with open arms. When you read this headline, you're thinking of a bunch of different guys. Could it be Taurean Prince? Could it be any of the new guys, some of the rookies? It's actually Gary Trent Jr. So obviously Giannis this offseason was very vocal about, he always has been vocal about the Bucks making moves, but he spoke out about Gary Trent Jr. Said one person is excited about Gary Trent Jr. is Giannis, who spoke highly of his new teammate at the Milwaukee Bucks Media Day, highlighting his importance to the team's overall goals. Gary is not scared of the moment. I don't think there's a bad shot for Gary. Very straightforward guy. He's here because he wants to win. He's here because he wants to play the right way and compete. And that's very true. Obviously, Giannis said that he's here to win. Gary Trent Jr. took a bit of a pay cut. He obviously could have gotten a multi-year deal from a couple teams. There wasn't too many out there that were vouching for his services too much, because he did have a down year with the Raptors last season. But he ultimately decided to sign with the Bucks on the veteran minimum in order to guarantee himself a chance to make a playoff push. Obviously, he spent his career, the first half of his career basically, with the Portland Trailblazers, then got traded to the Raptors, and neither team saw much playoff success whatsoever. And now, obviously, he's playing with the Bucks. He's reunited with Dame. I'm sure that played a big part of it, was being reunited with his former teammate in Portland. But also playing alongside one of the best players in the NBA in Giannis, the Bucks are prepared now to win. And they let Drew Holiday go in the trade. That a lot of fans were fired up about that one. But he's going to be, and he seems to factor into the starting lineup for Doc Rivers and the Milwaukee Bucks this year. And to have this praise from Giannis is, you got to be encouraged and excited if you are a Bucks fan, but also if you're Gary Trent Jr., because again, he came here to win. He's not scared of the moment. We've seen him with the Blazers and the Raptors. He'll take the big shot if it's needed, and to have another guy that can take that big shot, who can create for themselves, to pair with Dame, to pair with Giannis and Chris Middleton, it, like I've mentioned tons of times, it adds a lot of depth to the team, and something that the Bucks desperately needed and lacked last year, especially in lieu of Jrue Holiday being gone and Damian Lillard having his first year here with Giannis and not being fully accustomed to playing alongside another true superstar in Giannis Antetokounmpo. So, but he also had some more things to say. Basically, the Bucks have welcomed the newest starter with open arms, and again, Giannis was one of the biggest advocates for Gary Trent Jr., obviously, when they signed him, but also now, and I'm sure he was also a big advocate of signing him to, talking to John Horst before they ultimately made that deal. But he said, I just remember him being extremely confident. His belief in himself made me a believer in him. We got into the bubble, and he was playing a lot of minutes for us. And this is, of course, Damian Lillard speaking out on his former teammate, Gary Trent Jr. He was guarding everyone, making big shots. We put him on LeBron, and we ended up beating them in Game 1. I'm excited to be his teammate again. And again, fortunately for the Milwaukee Bucks, Trent has a very clear idea of what he needs to do to succeed in his new environment. And again, like I just mentioned, we remember Gary Trent Jr. in the bubble back in 2020. He was an absolute machine, and he was playing alongside some very Damian Lillard. So now that he has some of that familiarity back, and he had some of his best years with Portland Trail Blazers, he had a couple good years with the Raptors as well, a bit of a down year last year, but he's set up now to be back in a much more comfortable environment playing alongside Dame. He's not going to have as much focus on him like he did with the Raptors. You have guys like Dame, you have guys like Chris Middleton, and of course Giannis Antetokounmpo. All of those guys are going to be the focal point of the opposing team's defense. They're not going to be focused fully on Gary Trent Jr. And what that allows him to do is get more spot-up threes, get more opportunities to create for himself. And also, if he ends up sliding to the bench, he can help with the second unit that is also desperately going to need some scoring, because you have guys like DeLon Wright, Taurean Prince, Bobby Portis. Those are the three main bench players. You also have Gary. And if you stagger Dame onto the bench lineup, and then obviously you stagger him and Giannis, you keep Chris Middleton in there as well sometimes, the bench can be good, but adding as much depth as possible to a team that desperately needs it, not to mention some of the defense that Gary can hopefully bring now that he doesn't have as much of a load needed for him to, on the offensive side of things. Again, we saw with the Raptors, he was heavily involved in their offensive schemes, which kind of contributed to him being a bit of a worse defender than he was in Portland in his time early in Toronto, when they had more guys like, a lot of the players, Siakam, and when he was back with the Raptors before they traded him at the deadline last year. But ultimately, he's going to have a lot more room to operate. He's going to have more energy, hopefully, to put on the defensive end. And people are excited. And Gary Trent Jr. spoke out on what's needed from him. He said to go out there and contribute towards winning, be an energy giver, and play high-level basketball. My main goal, my main focus is to come here and win a championship, put another banner in here. That's the goal. And that is exactly what the Bucks need. They need someone who's not going to be selfish, who wants to play to win, because they have enough scorers right now. They have guys like Dame, Middleton, Giannis. Obviously, Gary's going to be a scorer. He's going to be a spark plug, whether he's playing off the bench or whether he's in the starting lineup. But what they need is winning players, and hopefully Gary can bring that, especially on the defensive end, where the Bucks struggled last year mightily. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this, and what your thoughts are on the injury update. Some good news on that front. So at least we'll hopefully see Gary Trent Jr. play in the preseason game tomorrow. See you soon.